At first at 4, state health officials say 9 children are sick at an Oahu elementary school, and they're investigating if it's linked to recalled chocolate milk.
They say the milk had an abnormal texture. Hawaii News Now broke the story on air and online. Mahealani Richardson joins us now with the latest developments. Mahea.
Well, Ash and Mark, the state epidemiologist told Hawaii News Now reports from 2 schools where that the milk looked like chocolate pudding.
After a voluntary recall of Metal Gold half-pint chocolate milk, the state health department is investigating if it's linked to reports of abnormal chocolate milk and illnesses at an Oahu elementary school. State epidemiologist Dr. Sarah Kemble told Hawaii News Now 9 children have gastrointestinal illness, like upset stomach and vomiting.
And the initial complaint was an abnormal texture to the milk. So it was coming out with a thicker texture, kind of like chocolate pudding.
And did the milk have an unusual smell? Was it curdling?
We're still investigating.
DOH says a Maui intermediate school also found the abnormal milk, but no one reported getting sick.
So we haven't yet clarified if they all drank the same batch of milk or not.
On Tuesday, parents at Kapalama Elementary School got a letter from the principal. It said, quote, "We are writing to inform you that several students reported feeling ill after lunch today." Tiare Ariscado is a parent at Kapalama. Her child did not get sick, but heard of the illnesses.
I want to say disgust. I'm thinking about improper storage. Perhaps the milk wasn't stored at a right temperature.
State health officials said approximately 70,000 half pints were distributed statewide, including at nearly 200 schools on Oahu, Maui, and Kauai, and that Metal Gold issued the recall voluntarily because of potential quality control issues. Officials say people are advised not to drink any Metal Gold chocolate milk labeled with the date October 16th, or if the milk looks, smells, or tastes unusual.
Now, state health officials say the recalled Metal Gold chocolate milk did not go to grocery stores. If you have concerns about illness, contact the health department or your medical provider. Mahealani Richardson, Hawaii News Now.
Thank you very much, Mahea.